This meeting to order of the Planning Commission. If we could all rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Stan Schmidt,
Present.
Newton White,
Present.
John Junko,
Present.
Maria Mills Bennett, Bobo Famey,
Here.
Thomas Jordan,
Here.
Lance Green.
Is here. All right, good consideration of the minutes from last month's meeting where Johnny Junko was unexcused.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
Comments, concerns, being none, would you call the roll, please?
Stan Schmidt,
Yes.
Newton White,
Yes.
John Junko,
Yes.
Bobo Famey,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan,
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes. All right. Item number 4, application River Yard Master Development Conceptual Agreement, case number PRZA 23-0004. Tim. And what we're going to do up here, guys, is we're going to let Tim do his presentation. Yeah, real quick, hang on.
You want a
We're
motion
going to let,
first, or you
hang
gonna
on
roll
one
into
second.
this?
We're going to let Tim do his presentation. When he's done, we're going to let Charles do his presentation. So now if I can get that motion.
Make a motion to approve case number, excuse me, PRZA-23-0004.
Second.
Can I just get
Pick
1
your one.
second, guys?
Pick one.
Doesn't matter.
All right, Tim.
Three minutes is almost up.
I know, I thought I was trying to stop there for a second. Hey Tracy, you know how to get this? Okay, that's looking just different on the screen. So, all right, I think basically, good afternoon, Tim Berman, Community Development. I think everyone's been waiting for this project for a long time to come before us, and we're excited to bring this forward here. The request is a River Yard Master Developmental Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan. The applicant, Bristol Development Group, is here in attendance along with quite a few of their consultants there. So we'll go through the presentation of the request here as staff has reviewed the application. The development team is also here to present, and then we're all available for questions at the end of the presentation then. So just a little bit of background as to how we got to this point. Back in fall of 2021 is when the City Council and CRA engaged in Colliers to market the property. Back in December 2021, the CRA and the City Council selected to work with Bristol Development. I'm sure everyone saw that. Some of you were actually at that meeting. And then starting in March was the initial sales agreement in 2022. And starting in March after that initial sales agreement, Bristol started a lot of doing site assessments, site data collection, parking studies, soil samples, getting prepared for this year. They also did a number of design workshops with consultants on what product to put on that point there. They also did something that's very key, was start acquiring adjacent properties that were not part of the city-owned property. But what this did was allow them to make a better project, expand the area than from what the initial concept was in 2021. Basically, there's a total of about 6 out parcels they've targeted. At this point now, they have 4 either purchased or under contract, and they continue to work to the other ones. But that was very important in terms of creating a better project, and they did take the time to get that acquired then. And then essentially in May of 2023 is when the MDA application was submitted, and now we're here in July to September is the public hearing process for that master development agreement going forward then. So what the request is, again, this is a request is approval of the Riverwalk MDA. The MDA and CDP would apply for about 12.4 acres, and that consists of the property that you see there on the screen. It's the large 11 acres on the northeast corner of Dunlawton and Ridgewood Avenue, and also includes the Dave's Pest Control property, about 1.4. That's what this MDA will cover essentially. The property is all currently zoned PCR residential or zoning district. So it's got a conventional city zoning district on it, which establishes uses and dimensional requirements already. Already establishes that mixed use is supposed to go there, along with a number of dimensional requirements. However, when we created that district, it was about 20 years ago. And a lot of the code requirements there were kind of geared toward a master development project, developing the whole entire 35 acres. And as we have kind of seen how the development has occurred there, with Riverwalk Park being one project, the middle central area being another project, and this one being kind of the third project there are needed for some deviations from some of the code requirements because of the way it's been developed. Now, it's still master planned in a sense of connecting certain aspects, such as the continuous walking trail along the river there, but other components of the project basically would not fit that master development kind of requirements we had in the past then. So what we did a couple years ago was establish the ability to propose an MDA and a CDP in the zoning district to allow you to kind of have a little bit more flexibility to create a better project then. And that is kind of what we're here for. Now, the proposed MDA and CDP, again, provides a framework for development. If this is approved, the next step is to move into the site plan. That's where we get into the more detailed, more site-specific infrastructure review. What this MDA does is essentially it outlines the allowed uses on the property, unit count, such as the maximum number of multifamily that you can have on it. It also establishes parking requirements and design requirements for parking. Adjustments in the LDC due to the project design, such as some setbacks, some buffers, some stuff regarding possible marinas. It accounted for all those then. And then also to the guidelines for development. Establishes the architectural requirements, establishes streetscape requirements, also to the general location of where those elements would be located then, such as where the multifamily generally would be located, the commercial, the waterfront park, and the roadway network. And then last, the phasing requirements. So this is essentially what you see here is the concept plan that you received in your packet, part of the CDP, and also provided in the staff report then. What this project is outlined to provide in the master development agreement shown in the concept plan is a number of components here listed there. Won't go into every one of them, but the main ones is the waterfront trail, a waterfront public park that would basically be between the road and Halifax River, up to 30,000 square feet of commercial space in multiple buildings, multifamily structure, a parking garage, and that parking garage would be located within, essentially wrapped around, or the multifamily building will wrap around the parking garage to help conceal that from all the roadway points of view then. So typically with projects you see kind of, 2 to 3 sides are a great view of a architecturally compatible building. Then you kind of see the back end of a parking garage. In this case, all sides that you really look through on this project will have basically screening that parking garage inside there then. Like we said, the streetscapes, there's also proposals for a marina in the future there, but the MDA kind of outlines these uses, and the concept plan shows a general location where those would be located. Again, as we get the site plan, there may be some modifications, adjustments slightly there, but generally in those locations are where we're going to find the commercial, the multifamily, and the park then. It also establishes a phasing for this project, as most our MDAs do. The first phase will consist of about 20,000 square feet of building space to support restaurants and retail uses. Also, the necessary parking to support those uses, depending on how the square footage provided then. That parking could be a combination of surface, garage, and/or street parking. It'll include the private road network of Halifax, Herbert, and what we're calling River Yard Drive. Those would be there. The Festival Street, which is located right between the retail buildings there. Does that show up on there? Retail building in the park then. The Waterfront Park and Trail, a riverfront bar and restaurant, which is identified on the screen there, right along the river. And the necessary site infrastructure to support those uses, your utilities, stormwater, landscape buffer, etc. Also too, the agreement basically indicates when this phase is due completed. The maximum kind of time frame there is set at 48 days or 48 months from the see if Charles is paying attention. Throughout practicing today, I said 48 days. I told myself I was not going to say that, and I screwed up and said it then. So, but 48 months from the closing date of the current sales agreement, then, which puts it at essentially March 2020 again, 28. Charles will mention that he wants it done a lot quicker than we want it done. So we see that as the maximum time frame there, but we'll all be working toward getting it done even sooner than that then. Then the remaining improvements here that we talked about, the remaining building space, the marina and a possible day dock, the multifamily building, overflow parking on the day's pest control, those would be set into future phases, which have not been, broken up yet, but those would be, eventually developed, or they could be pushed into the initial phase. The MDA only requires those phase 1 improvements to be completed there, but additional stuff can be done in phase 1. Just kind of a close up of that waterfront park that's being proposed there. Essentially, again, it would be between the Halifax Drive and the riverfront. Contains the amphitheater, some public space there, the restaurant. It will also continue the continuous trail from the current where it terminates at the property right in front of the city rec building all the way to Dunlawton. What this will do is create a pathway so you can essentially travel from Dunlawton Avenue through this project, through the project where Fish is located, and walk around our park and technically loop back around, use the 12-foot wide sidewalk on Ridgewood Avenue, and essentially complete a loop in terms of walking there then. And so this is more of a close-up of that and a lot of the elements that are initially proposed on that. And this is just to kind of outline kind of how it fits in with the rest of that area as it's been developed so far then. So as you can see, it basically does form that linkage across the riverfront in terms of for walking then, and also basically you kind of see how the overall fit is in with that area of Riverwalk as we develop them. As mentioned earlier, there are a few policy considerations. Again, a lot of these considerations are based on the type of project that's coming before, and really kind of having to adjust to our codes. Again, our codes for such as landscaping and some dimensional requirements are really based off of your typical development on Dunlawton Avenue, Nova Road. This is more of a mixed-use compact development project there. So some of our dimensional requirements and landscaping requirements just don't kind of work in this situation. So we basically got some policy considerations in there. We've added, additional requirements or replaced requirements in the MDA. For example, the foundation planning requirements there that typically you see, on your buildings on Dunlawton Avenue, along the front of the building, kind of masking some of the architecture there. And this one, we want to go with streetscapes. We want basically the people to see the architecture of that building. We also want people to utilize the front space of that building then. So while they've deviated from not having a foundation planning, they replace it with a different type of foundation, a kind of different landscape planning that's more suitable for this type of development then. So there was kind of the staff report outlined the policy issues in kind of 8 categories then, and kind of went through each one that's being requested. And these are kind of the major ones listed on there then. If at the end of the presentation, if anyone has any further questions on those policy questions, be happy to answer those then. But staff kind of outlined what the applicant's request was, what the supporting documentation was to those policy considerations. So to wrap up on staff's presentation here, the recommendation is approval of the River Yard Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan, subject to approval of the policy issues and review by the City Attorney's Office for form and content then. And then in addition to, after this meeting here, the next public hearing on this project will be with the joint meeting with the Port Orange Town Center CRA and the City Council on August 15th at 6:30 p.m.
You good?
Good.
All right, thank you. So we're gonna open the floor to Charles and let Charles come up and do a little presentation for us. You got 2 minutes.
All right?
Nah.
After the 48-day thing.
Well, yes.
Get through in 2 minutes. So just click.
Yeah, hey,
how
Tracy,
do we get it on the
can we get
screen?
the PowerPoint back on? Get the PowerPoint.
Which PowerPoint?
There we go. All right. There you go.
Just click the mouse to go forward,
yeah,
click these.
yeah, to click those
Okay.
in.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thanks. Thank you. I'm Charles Carlisle with Bristol Development Group, and with us tonight also are a representative from our civil engineers, our land planners, landscape architects, and our attorneys. In the event you have questions, and there are some of the technical ones, I would certainly defer to them on. This is a really important project to us. I think also one of the most interesting and enjoyable that we've worked on. I think we probably all agree that that's the case. We know it's also very important to the city of Port Orange and to the community of Port Orange. And so we've put our hearts and soul in this, and give thanks to you for your time and energy that you're giving to it. This is the site that's shown, that's shaded, is the land, as Tim said, that the city owned. And you can tell from there's some pieces missing we'll talk about in a second. No question, all of you know the views. Whoop, this didn't forward. Would it maybe, would that resume slideshow be the ticket? Incompatible audio signals been received.
All right, you got 2 minutes and you got 48 days to get her done. Better get busy.
Try this. You bring that one up?
Because I don't know what they're doing. Okay, and it's not clicking over?
It's almost like it's frozen up there because we're changing on our screen here.
I think help might be on the way.
What isn't, or isn't it doing?
Mark and Bobby are liking this. They get paid by the hour.
It is not.
What do we have now?
I you know. This, is to come up on the screen. This one right here. Go ahead and get rid of mine.
I'm not sure why it's showing the desktop.
This is what I was trying to get it to come up on
I'm
the
gonna
screen.
get into the keyboard, please.
Obviously, I'm gonna be here longer than my battery's gonna last.
So that looks to be the PowerPoint, but it wasn't sliding to the next.
Let's just try and see what happens. Here we go.
Now it's go, okay, perfect.
So I'm gonna, hide the things, maybe I don't wanna try, but
Yep.
just to fill the screen.
You wanna, yep, just, I've gotta remember how to start the poll.
That's okay. Why don't we,
There we go. Just do it from current
oh,
slide.
good.
And
All right,
then-
thank you.
And then should be able to click and.
It looks like it works with the mouse. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Don't go home yet.
You all are familiar, the views and the location here are unparalleled, just a really exciting location for this mixed-use development. These are photographs from the site. We actually had our whole team out there. They'll show you a couple of pictures of in a minute. One of the things that we did, and you can see these trees that are there now, when we walked the site as part of this team meeting, we actually had done a tree survey at that point in time, and we pushed around some of the buildings in order to be able to save some of the specimen trees along Halifax Drive. And you can see in these pictures why the trees like that add so much to it. Unfortunately, because of the low-lying area that has to be filled in order to get this all above the floodplain, there are limited places where we're able to do that. This shows the properties that were not part of the initial acreage that the city had. And as Tim mentioned, we've now closed on one of these 6. We have 3 others of the most critical ones under contract, and continue to work on the last 2 that are screened out of this presentation and then would hopefully later be brought into the MDA when they are under contract. These are pictures from the workshop that we had. We had probably 20 different people there over 2 full days, including our full design and development team, our retail consultants, a lot of the city staff and city council members came to it. And a lot of the decisions that we made about the project came out of those 2 days together. The principles that we established for development of this were to embrace the waterfront, and in doing so, creating a place that was shared with the public, and that dovetails into the second point of creating places for people where people want to come over and over. And then generating a new vibe was just to create some places that are interesting and that invite people to come back again and again. These were some of the inspiration images that we picked as our favorites out of that process as things to use as the basis for our design, where we find examples of waterfront dining, of public gatherings in a park, of attractive outdoor spaces. And then one of the most important things was how our streets work. We wanted to create streets that felt comfortable for pedestrians, for people on bicycles, and could be utilized by automobiles, but would be designed in a way that if you're driving a car, you don't feel like you can go very fast, because there's elements of the street that require you to go slow. These are examples over on the left side of this page. The materials that are used in the streets, the fact that they're flush and have no curbs, and that the sidewalks are on the same plane with the surface of the street. All 3 of the streets, the 2 at the top of the top left and the one at the bottom, are designed for automobiles as well as pedestrians and bikes. And you can actually see examples of there's an automobile down here behind these 2 guys that are looking away, and there's an example in West Palm Beach as well. I think it's pronounced here Clematis Street. My wife corrects me every time I say that. She's a master gardener. I don't fight with her. She calls it Clematis, but whichever it is, it's one of these type streets. And these again were part of the inspirations for our streets. This is another copy of the master plan that Tim put up. I want to just point out a couple of things. One of the first important decisions that we made about the development of this was to keep Halifax Drive as a public street, so that people could come down to the waterfront, park nearby, and walk to the waterfront. You've probably seen a lot of waterfront developments done with the buildings that people occupy brought right up to the waterfront. And so a limited number of people get a great view of the waterfront and they can walk out their back door, but the members of the public are shut out of that. This is the opposite approach, trying to take the waterfront and share it with the public, create an exciting place that the residents also want to be part of, because it is so activated. And
Just move the mouse.
oh, good. Another IT person. So one of the that also created space for this public park, and though we couldn't move this intersection with Dunlawton because of the importance of keeping it where it is, we did, as we went to the north, pulled Halifax Drive back into the property in order to create a wider public park. And so that's probably the most important thing we did, was keeping Halifax Drive and then also keeping the intersection with Herbert and Ridgewood as public streets. That also gives us a lot of parking spaces. There are more than 100 parking spaces on Halifax Drive and Herbert Street in this design. A couple of things I'll mention. The multifamily building, as Tim mentioned, it wraps around this parking garage. One of the other things that we did was, because we wanted to break up the mass of the building, we created these wings and courtyards that provide a lot of visual interest from the street and make it seem less imposing than if it were just a monolithic faced building. And so we've done that on both Halifax and Dunlawton. We've also created a lot of amenity spaces that will provide attractive views in from the public streets. We've got retail buildings along Halifax. All of those are designed to have front terraces for outdoor dining or for people to sit and enjoy coffee or things like that. There are sidewalks on both sides of both Halifax and Herbert Street, and all of those elements together are designed to create a walkable, fun, enjoyable environment. The kind of retail we're focused on here is what our consultant calls experiential retail. It's things like restaurants and coffee shops and fitness and ice cream shops, the kind of places where people come back to again and again, as opposed to a dress shop you might want to come to once a year, or your State Farm agent that you only come to periodically. So those are the kind of retail experiences we're trying to create here. The public park, I think Tim did a good job of covering that. You'll see it's broken into almost like two halves. The southern half is what we think of as a more organic and natural setting, where there are a lot of opportunities for people to come and just sit and enjoy the atmosphere, to fish off the seawall. There's a kayak and stand-up paddleboard launch there. And so all of those elements work together to create a more natural environment. As you go to the north, this is the active part of the park. And this is where we've got the amphitheater. There's an outdoor restaurant bar there, a flex lawn that could be used for people to sit on for a music event or set up for an art show or things of that nature. And the idea is to activate this through programming regularly, daily, small events and regular big events to create an active space. This is not a great picture, but it does give you an idea of the expanse of the park and the way it would look from the water, looking back toward the west with the amphitheater at the far right and the little bar restaurant on the left side here. When we did that slide, we had not done any architecture. We've now designed the exterior of the apartment building. This is what it looks like, and you can even tell from this vantage how breaking up the plane of the building and creating those movements with the courtyards and little wings makes it a really attractive a building. We intend to use 3 different architectural styles on the building as it breaks up from one piece to another. This is the wing that's over toward Dunlawton, which is done in modern architecture. The wing that is over where all the retail is a more classical, coastal looking architecture. I don't have an image of the one that's on Ridgewood, but that's contemporary architecture. This is the corner at Halifax Drive and the street we're calling River Yard that goes in front of the parking garage and out to Ridgewood. This is a look back from Halifax Drive, which is here, toward the parking garage. This little arched opening is the opening into the parking garage. There's 2+ floors of public parking inside the parking garage, in addition to all the surface spaces that are outside. And this is the passageway to come out of there with retail, along the right side here and residential spaces along the side on the apartment building. Whoop. Don't know how to go back, but
That's in December?
hmm?
That's in December.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there we go. And so, thank you. We look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Charles. All right, so, are we gonna come back with you, Tim, or how are we gonna, how you wanna go about this, for questions? Do we wanna start with questions of our staff first? Do we have any questions of staff, Stan?
Yeah, that's what I was kinda just going with the flow of this, I was marking questions
Okay.
as I read along, so, to me, but I mean, you guys may have different opinions.
Okay, so, and again, let's consider that we are here for the MDA outline, if you will, or the general outline of the MDA. We're not here talking about colors and bushes, you know, we're talking about what can go where and in that respect, of this MDA, okay? Stan, you got questions of Tim?
I've got a number of things, so I don't know if you want me to just do 2 or 3 and then roll on and roll back, how do you wanna do that?
Others, I
Huh?
think we could go start with Stan, all his questions then.
All right, let's go,
You
Stan.
wanna do them all? All right.
Yeah, then, like I said, there's some
Because if we
questions-
got any redundancy, okay?
Okay.
If there's questions that we kind of feel that basically the developer might be able to give more input on then,
Okay.
let's ask them to come up and go that way, if you don't mind.
Okay, so basically what I was looking for is, you know, as I'm reading along, just what's going on. So the section where we talk about the general site plan, which is about the 3rd page of the staff report, it says there are 3 private internal streets, Herbert Street, Halifax Drive, and River Yard Drive. So when we sold this property, so we sold then Herbert Street and Halifax Drive, because those were city streets, correct?
Basically, it's part, we haven't sold them yet, but basically part of the purchase agreement is,
Right.
it was contemplated from the get-go, basically, that we would be vacating those rights away, and then basically that would be included in the property that they get then, and that will allow them to create private streets then.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, I just, you know, just
So as
clarify.
part of, when it goes to the city council here in next month, and in the following month, there will be a discussion item regarding the right-of-way vacation, and that's another application that will have to be timed up later on in the project then
Right.
to make that happen then. But that was initially contemplated when we started the process, you know, back in, November 2021 then.
Okay. And then, on the next page, then when we talk about phasing, we talked about in the first phase, there would be 20,000 square feet of retail indoor restaurant. And I'm assuming that's the restaurant or bar that you were talking about in the park? Is that what we're looking at?
They'd be included in that square footage amount
Right.
then, but basically that, the initial one, the restaurant, the bar would be in the park there, would be
Right.
included, and then basically.
And that's phase 1?
That's phase 1. The other
Okay.
uses would basically be the shell building infrastructure set up for those uses to go into that.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so if you flip back then to 6, where we start talking about the policy considerations. The thing that I was kind of curious about here is we talk about the FFE, the finished floor elevation.
Correct.
And we mentioned here that this is kind of based on some of the FEMA maps and stuff like this. I guess the biggest concern after we had all the trouble last year with flooding. Now, I know we're already raising this property 2 or 3 feet, so we're gonna get up to quite a bit. And I know we've got these vaults underneath there that are gonna hold the water instead of retention ponds and like that. So is FEMA coming out with a new map after the Ian and all that kind of stuff? Is that gonna affect this at all or no?
No, we have not heard
Okay,
of
so
anything.
we're dealing with the map that is
Right.
currently in existence.
Yeah, which I believe is in the mid 2014 timeframe is when it was updating that then.
Right.
And this code, when it was created back in around like the early 2000s, established that finished floor elevation of 9. And as we've gotten better information, better maps then, basically that code never got changed on it then. But in terms of when you apply it, you know, if you use our land development code, the current requirements are LDC for basically throughout the city then,
It's
it would be
7 foot.
finished floor 7 then. So
Right.
really all they're asking to do is to utilize the
Okay.
codes that we have in place in our land development code, which applies to every other property in Port Orange then.
Okay, well, again, the whole point, the only reason I bring that up is because I went through a big freak out after Ian, And, you know, if FEMA comes through with new maps and global warming and yada, yada, yada. So we know this is our baseline, because this is what existed at the time we're doing this plan, and we're doing the MDA. Okay, that's cool. And that's, and again, that takes into, the way we've got these vaults set up, that'll take into retaining the water on the property and not dumping it onto Ridgewood or
I'd
Dunlop.
prefer to, you want basically the engineer Randy Hudak, can you
Sure.
speak a little bit more on
Yeah,
that?
I'll take a shot.
Evening, Randy Hudak, Zevco and Associates. Yeah, Tim's correct. We have underground exfiltration systems that'll be placed throughout the site depending on which phase is gonna be developed where. Typically, they're not located under buildings. They'd be placed under parking areas or maybe some green spaces. But the intent is they would capture the water, treat it, and there would be a small amount of water that would be discharged to the river, but it would be clean water.
So is this, would it have like a porous bottom then, so it just kind of settle out?
Yeah, typically the bottom is made of rock, so there's several different ones. It's either a pipe that has holes in it, or they're like on the half moon pipe. It's just
Okay.
a half a pipe where the bottom's open, there's gravel underneath it, and the water just perks out.
Okay. So, and that was the thing, you said you're not gonna dump much out into the river. And
Right.
we don't have to worry about tying it into the rest of the city's drainage
Correct.
issues or something like that. Why don't somebody else take a shot for a while?
Okay, Newt?
In the package that we have, figure 3 and figure 2 are of the same, figure 3 and figure 4 maybe, are of the same, no, figure 2 and figure 3 are of the same area, with Riverwalk Drive, Herbert Street. And one of them shows, the first one shows, a different footprint of, retail space and parking. And then the second one shows optional future hotels. And my concern with that is, and I saw some of the images, the renderings in the presentation that showed multi-floor buildings, I believe in the places where this would be. How are you planning on doing that? Is this part of a master future plan? And are we gonna be having more parking garage underneath the hotels and multi-floor buildings? How is that gonna come to pass?
You want me to take that?
Yeah.
We do have an option. We are talking to a hotel developer about a relatively small, less than 100-room hotel. And right now, our plan would, according to the CDP, it needs to go into that mixed-use area. It would be its own freestanding building with no parking underneath it. Its parking would be in the parking garage or in the surface lots, and it would be replacing retail that would be there otherwise, and so that retail parking demand goes away, the hotel parking demand takes its place. And actually, under a shared parking analysis, which is what we're basing all of our parking demand on, with the hotel, there's actually less overall parking needed because of the efficiency or diversity you get, because somebody staying in the hotel also goes to eat at the restaurant or goes to the park, and you don't have 3 different people coming in that need to park their car. And so we didn't want to provide a plan with only a hotel, because we're not certain that that's going to come. So if the hotel doesn't, we would just have retail in its place.
Okay.
You good, Newt?
That was my biggest thing, yes.
Because as it was explained to me, this first picture that you see, figure 2, was the one that's been presented all along, that everybody's kind of been looking at, we've been looking at for a long, long time. But figure 3 in reality is the footprints of what could go where, correct, Tim?
Figure 3 is the actual true concept plan.
Correct.
And then kind of figure 2 is more kind of just a conceptual layout to kind of show you what that could evolve into then.
Yeah.
But for this purposes.
But that's not set in stone.
Right, that.
The
that
concept
plan there.
plan we're talking about here today.
Right.
All right, Johnny?
Curious about the transitional point between Festival Street and the Fish Restaurant. How is that gonna be connected? Is that gonna be a road that goes clear through all these properties that reach out to the restaurant?
but that's a different property owner, right,
It
Tim?
is, I was just wanna know how they're, cause it says it's gonna be connecting to existing trails. I don't know if that's a roadway, a walkway.
Well, essentially the trail itself for pedestrians will connect in there, so you can walk from Fish down the trail there into this development then. In terms of the cars that will be able to go on the Festival Street, there is a connection that they'll be able to make a turn and funnel back throughout the River Yard site. They will not be able to enter into the adjacent property.
The street will
Okay,
terminate there.
So there's no way you can drive, like how we've been connecting parking lots.
At this
Yeah.
point,
We're not gonna be doing that in
At
this.
this point, there's no,
Okay,
there's
alright.
you know, that could be something that's done in the future.
Okay.
As that develops with vehicles then, but for right now, for this project, it basically is the interconnectivity for the pedestrian, on there then. It's basically, preserved and, with one of the things we wanna make sure that continuous trail is made.
All right, thank you. That's all
Because
I
that
had.
discussion's obviously to the next property owner, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. All right, Tom, anything for Tim?
Yeah, actually, yes. So based on it talks about 48 months, based on the closing date, but it says substantial completion of phase 1 would need to be done. What's substantial? Was that defined in the MDA? Did I miss something in there?
It's in there.
Yeah, I mean, substantial
It's
completion
defined in the building
basically
department,
is-
too.
Is basically the building had passed final inspections.
Mhm.
Sometimes with, substantial completion, there may be a certain type of, architectural feature on the side of the building that has not been provided yet then. And, there could be more aesthetic things there, but in terms of the true infrastructure for the site to operate and function, basically is substantial. If there are things that basically are more, decorative, that, maybe a walk light hasn't been coming
Sure.
yet then. Something like that, we want to basically have a little bit more flexibility on in case of that one, because we've experienced that in other projects. And, but if it's
Sure.
something major like the completion of a building, that doesn't fall in substantial. But
It falls
basic-
down to where you're to the punch list, Tom. If there's a punch list on the site by the city
Yeah.
staff or the city engineer, those type of things that are not huge, you know what I'm saying? So, but the property could function.
And then you talked about, look at my notes here. My notes.
It's the yellow part there.
So we talked about phase 1, 20,000 square feet of mixed-use retail, is that right, or is that retail?
Retail or restaurant uses.
Right, okay. Versus 35,000 that's shown in the
renderings
concept.
and- Yeah.
But then we're also, and in the presentation, we see multiple large buildings, and in the drawing, it was 9,500 square feet for one, 9,500 square feet. We got 35,000 there. But then we talk about 3,000 square foot lots.
That would basically is just, and the applicant can explain that more than, is just some of these restaurant users or end users
Mhm.
want to own the ground underneath them.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we have the ability, if that's the case, then to create those smaller lots than a 3,000 square feet then.
So we could see, instead of 4 9,000 square foot buildings with multiple tenants, we could see individual owned buildings.
That might be an option, but they just want to make sure they're flexible enough, because they're looking to get the best users in here, and if that's kind of what it takes to get the higher end there, then we want to make sure that's there. In terms of us noticing any difference between if it was a platted lot and not on this project, you wouldn't know by walking in there if one is a 3,000 square foot lot or not then, but it just gives them an extra tool in terms of marketing. And I think Charles can speak a little bit more as to what that request was for too.
But then we're still talking about the request for 5-foot setbacks, right?
Yeah, the 5-foot setback was more for the project there and would
Mhm.
apply here too. And again, that's basically because we're trying to, a mixed use develop more compact then. And having those 5-foot setbacks allow us to kind of have a little more flexibility and also too get more of that public realm that we're trying to do in these projects in. So that's why that's proposed.
But if it was a 3,000 square foot lot that somebody purchased, you'd have 5-foot setbacks on each of those buildings.
It's basically the setback there for the 5 foot's external.
Right.
So the internal would basically be what the current code is, could be 0 then.
Oh, okay.
So-
That's on the external.
Yeah.
All right.
There's some requirements too that basically, like I said, that are already in the current LDC for this one, and one of them have lower internal lot than on it then. So that would be
Okay.
allowed for the if
So
it's-
this is kind of like a townhouse then, you buy this slice of the building,
yeah, except
and
for the
that's the
commercial.
lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, one other purpose for that is, our intention is for all of the parking in the streets to be owned by the Property Owners Association. And so all the parking would be in common. So when you sell a retail space or a hotel footprint or whatever, it would not have any parking associated with it. And so that's why it's a relatively small amount of real estate.
Good, okay. And then part of the request is to allow 105 feet on buildings, right?
Yes, for building height then, and, on that then.
Okay. Alrighty. And I'm confused by the river yard and river walk. What is this? And I noticed on the building, you had the big Riverwalk sign and the concept drawing. What is this going to be called?
The MDA and basically the project here will be called the River Yard then. Applicant can kind of speak more of that. I think the name we started the process, and then the name kind of evolved during the MDA there, so there may be some cleanup on that then, but Charles can speak a little bit more to the name of the
Please
project.
do.
I wish I had a better answer, but Riverwalk is what this has gone by for years, and our marketing and branding consultants and some of our partners felt like it would be nice to give this development its own name. And so after many tries and running into problems with people having trademarks for certain names, we've kind of ended up with River Yard as our current working name. And so so right now that would be the way this project would be branded, would be as River Yard. And so Riverwalk would eventually, sort of go away for this part of the 30 acres that are there.
Interesting. Riverwalk is copyright by somebody, trademarked by
No,
somebody?
there were some other names that we liked a lot.
So you didn't like Riverwalk?
No, I like Riverwalk. It's just that the whole 30 acres has been called Riverwalk, and we were looking for something unique for this portion.
For this part of it.
Mhm.
So this is River Yard at Riverwalk, which
Right.
nobody will ever use the word River Yard because it's Riverwalk.
Yeah.
Or is this supposed to be like
It's still-
Camden Yards?
It's still a work in process.
If it's gonna be Riverwalk or River Yard, maybe it should be River Yards.
It's still the Riverwalk Development District though, right, Tim? Or
No.
Yeah?
No, it's-
Yeah.
This
Zoning
particular
and stuff like that
project will
used
be
as
River
Riverwalk.
Yard.
Yeah, it'll be very confusing for the next couple of years then.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. I'm good for now.
Once we get a good tenant in there, we'll just start calling it X place. They're like fish on that one then. So it'll clear up in a few more
There you
months.
go.
Riverwalk, River Yard.
20 years from now, none of us will be here, so.
Well, right now,
maybe-
one of them's alive and the other one's dead, so, from a public perspective, I believe. There's a marina going in there, according to the exhibit. And, is that gonna be a motorized marina? Is it gonna be for motorized boats, or is it?
Yeah, that's in a future phase there. They want to have the ability to explore to
That's not
install.
really phase one.
No, not in phase one, and it basically would be, allow for basically motorized boats to go in there.
Mhm.
The intent would be for people who are traveling in their boat to dock there overnight and visit the site. And also too, I think basically they said that could be an option for people who rent and have a boat to dock their boat there then. But again, that would have to go through all the permitting process, and we just kind of allowed that use and identified it in the concept plan.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, with a marina, obviously, a question comes up about a launch. Would we be launching? No
No.
launch, okay, that answers the question. Cause, we need parking for trailers, and we don't wanna get into that. The parking for the condominium, or for the, multi-unit, that's strictly for residents, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
the ratio for multifamily there would be for just the
I mean,
multifamily
it's
residents.
strictly for the residents of the facility. Nobody
Yeah.
else can park there.
Yeah, they'll have designated parking for the residents.
Yeah.
Well, the garage, the residents would park in the garage.
Right.
The first 2+ levels of the garage are actually public parking.
Oh, I
Open,
see, okay.
And the intention is for that to be open to the public, free, open all hours that the development's in operation, and would be closed at night. Then, where there's a break, the upper levels of the garage have gates that residents would go through. And so they have the upper levels of the garage or their own parking. And, so it's a shared garage.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I may have missed it when I was reading through the document. That's good. I have one question too, and this is kind of a one-off question, Tim. There's no kind of non-compete agreement with fish.
I'm not aware of anything, and Charles or
I'm
Mark can
thinking
speak to
about-
that. No, they're
I'm
saying no.
thinking about, you know, other fish restaurants going in there, so there's no non-compete.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Question for the developer. The parking garage for the multifamily, and its apartments, how many parking spaces per unit is that allowing?
We are at 1.3 spaces per unit in the plan, and that's about the same number
that's-
we intend to build.
So you're allowing basically one unit, one parking per unit, and .3 would be considered guest parking.
No, guest parking would all be outside that, because the garage that's dedicated residents would be only residents. Guests would not be able to enter that part of the garage.
So guests would be down in the public parking.
That's correct. And you know, we do this obviously for a living, and one of the things that we find, which probably makes sense given what's happening with Uber and Lyft and bicycling and things like that, is demand for parking in parking garages for multifamily has actually gone down fairly dramatically over the last 20 years. And so this is designed to be a little bit above one parking space per bedroom. That's the way we look at it. More than 50% of our units are one bedroom or studio units. The rest are 2 and 3 bedroom units. And so the way we look at that's exactly where we want to be, is about one space per bedroom for a 1 bedroom, and 2 spaces for a 2 bedroom or a 3 bedroom.
Okay, so that's how that makes more sense. That you had me scared there until you explained that. So if you had a 3 bedroom, they would maybe have 3 parking spaces dedicated to them.
Yeah, there's also a lot of turnover of those spaces. We don't reserve any of the parking spaces.
Mhm.
And so you get a lot of, good example, today, I'm not at work, and so my car's not parked in our parking lot. I'll get back tomorrow, and one of my partners will be in another city, and so that one parking space, he's parked in today, I'll be parked in tomorrow. Same thing with residents. There's a lot of
Oh,
turnover.
I'm
of
quite
spaces.
familiar with multi-level parking and condominiums and such.
Yes.
That's what I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was just gonna point out, for the record, Mark Watts with Cobb Cole, representing the developer, and if you look on the staff report, we pulled that information also from the ITE manual. So we looked at kind of statistically around the country, what's the average for this type of parking demand? And the number in the staff report is 1.15 to 1.5, or to 1.52 is kind of the range, and so 1.3 was kind of right in the midpoint of what, statistically speaking, we see around the country with this type of development. So we got that number.
Yeah, I saw that in the staff report, and it just struck me here as with Bo's question. And well, wait a second now. Where's everybody going to park? And it had me concerned that we were going to be eating up the public parking for, people that may have 2 cars. And there's quite a few places that have that issue right now.
Yeah, there's method to what we've approached here. So
Yeah, we've hired, they're the largest parking consultant in the country. Walker Consultants is our parking consultant that is both designing the parking garage with us as well as doing all of our parking demand studies. And so something we take real seriously because it's life or death to us.
You good?
I'm good.
The only couple questions I had was, again, the first thing I had was the height, and again, I'm okay with the height at 105, and I think that projects like this need height to be able to make them survive. I mean, if you're too low, you're not gonna make it. The only other question I had, Tim, was why are we not putting any type of date to the completion of phase 2 or any kind of timeline to phase 2? I mean, we're given 4 years on phase 1, I get infrastructure plans, but why are we not having any type of date on phase 2?
I think we can speak to the applicant, speak on this as to their proposal on there, but I think what we've seen basically in projects too, especially in the MDAs, is once you push out, 5, 6, 7 years there, there's a lot of things that can happen then, and then basically we're back in here amending things then. So the main focus of this project from the city standpoint was that public park, the road network, the parking, and basically getting a substantial amount of commercial uses on there then. And that phase 1 accomplishes those goals then. The remaining, items there, basically, was not a need to basically put up a time frame on there then, just because we don't know when those will occur. Most likely, the multifamily project is not in phase 1, but I'm assuming that will basically be built, in phase 1 or close to it then. And I think basically, there, so that's why we did not put end date for phase 2, phase 3 going on there.
I mean, it just seems like in our history of things and things of that project, et cetera, we've allowed them and then they stopped or they dragged or whatever, And I just would like to see that, this is going to come to fruition, and we've had developers sit in front of us before, and and I can name several of them that have done nothing. And so I just want to make sure that we don't get started out there and then we quit.
So I think one of the other reasons, and for the record, Mark Watts again, I think one of the other things that we're trying to plan for in here is the important part as we've been working with staff, and I've got to compliment Charles and his team. I think they've worked with staff better than almost any developer I've ever seen engage with the city and work with their staff. But I think the key components were put in phase 1, the things that the city really, really wanted to see: the public space, the public park, the things that are, the retail experience along there. And so those are the things we put in and put that hard and fast deadline on. At that point in time, from a development standpoint, Charles will have bought the property, put all of the money into the things that are not making money for him or for the investors in the property. So, I think he said at the beginning of this, he's going to want this finished more than almost anybody because he's the one that's trying to, make the return on the investment. But what we've seen in the course of the past year and a half or 2 years that we've been working with your staff on is probably the worst economy in recent history for multifamily development. And so we're trying to make sure that we're providing the flexibility needed to bring that forward as soon as physically possible, as soon as financially possible. But committing up front, first and foremost, you're going to get the things that are the keys for the city's, from the public's perspective, the public space, that retail experience along the waterfront. And then they have the burden of, kind of bringing everything forward and making sure that they're making a return on the investment as well. But from a zoning document standpoint, I think the key is what's the thing that has to be done in order to vest the entitlements that are here, so that there's certainty with regard to that, so that we can continue working to make sure everything else comes along. I think our expectation is phase 1 is completed and phase 2 is right there with it, because we've been able to pull the financing and everything together as well.
So let me ask you this, Mark, and I'm just sitting there having a brain freeze here, but so in reality, okay, and I'm just saying, he buys this property come next year. He could put a fence around that property and block it off, correct?
We have commitments to the city. One of the things we have to provide at closing is there's easements to the public, in particular for along the waterfront and everything else. So there are protections that are not in a zoning document necessarily, but are in the purchase and sale agreement with the city.
There are? Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Right.
in reality, you could go out
Yeah.
there and block it off and say, I ain't doing nothing.
Yeah. And in this instance, he's got a commitment not only, again, from and with regard to the purchase and sale agreement, which obviously you guys don't see because that's not part of the overall zoning. There are commitments that require the public, access to be secured as title is being transferred over. And that's, again, for the waterfront areas of the property and everything else. The balance of it, again, this is, the deadline that you have in here from an MDA standpoint is in order to vest these rights that we've created, you have to have the public benefit there within that 4-year time period.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
And so that was the key. Make sure that the public access is guaranteed, make sure we've.
But I think the overall project is obviously the most critical goal. I get it. I get we get first phase, but the overall project and the residential and people living there, and that's what makes the concept work.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay.
We agree.
Let me.
Okay, it does. Okay, good.
I got a question to follow up on that. So
Go
let me
ahead.
clarify what you just said.
Mark, we're not done with you, Mark.
Okay, got it.
So-
Jessica, who's done most of the drafting on everything here, so Jessica
Okay,
Gallo,
yeah,
with
we
our office,
found it.
is
Thank
also
you.
pointing out that public access is in the PD
Yeah, that
specifically
is.
as well.
She knows
So
what she's talking about.
She does, that's right, that's why she's.
Well, so that was, I want to follow up on that question that Lance brought. So, unless I misheard you, clarify this for me. You have to have the public access done by 2048.
The improvements.
2024, 2028.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Oh, here we go again.
It's 48 days.
48 hours.
You're
48.
Charles. Sorry about that, Charles. Man, all kinds of stuff.
Hey, you just got all kinds of time.
That's right. That's right.
So, but that's when you have to have it done and available?
That's correct. So from the date of
Substantially
closing,
complete.
that's
So
the,
we have
that's
4
the.
years before we might see.
Now,
Before you're walking
the
on it.
access rights are secured when you deed the property over. When, in other words, when the closing occurs, and I'll defer to your counsel as well to confirm it, but we've got an obligation to make sure that the public access rights are retained by the city
Got that.
as soon as title is conveyed, so that you don't ever give those up.
But I don't want to tell my friends that, oh yeah, you'll be able to walk down to the park in a year or 2
Right.
or 3.
Right. So this it has a deadline, and obviously the deadline is that 48 months from the date of closing.
Yeah. I've got a former church that sat there for 3 years because they had 3 years. so.
And we're all familiar with those projects. We're trying
Yeah.
to make sure that there's, I think in the process of this and working with your staff, we want to provide certainty. So that was a date that we worked on with regard to certainty and making sure that the
Gotcha.
public components were there. But we're also, again, dealing with a very interesting market right now with regard to financing for multifamily and mixed-use projects in
You
particular.
know, that's amazing. I heard you say that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, boy, that sure is causing a lot of these apartment buildings to not get built.
Well,
which
if you
is
look
exactly
at,
the
if you look,
opposite.
but if you look at what's happening right now, the combination of insurance,
Right now.
construction costs, and interest rates, which went up another quarter point yesterday, that combination of things is creating a difficult environment for financing large projects like this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are doing the $50 million or the $70 million apartment building like up at LPGA. But, here we're over $200 million in all-in cost at this point in time for this project, $220 million. And pulling that whole financing
Yeah.
picture together in this environment, we're just trying to make sure we provide flexibility and give the public the
You
benefit
got a
of
moving target on that.
Absolutely.
That's crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
You got friends?
Okay, and then I got one more question for you, Charles. So when we, let's just say we go out there and we start turning shovels, is the project, so basically all along Halifax Drive, the river, everything will be closed for construction for however, some infinite period of time? I
Well,
assume.
not
4
hopefully
years?
not,
I mean,
but no.
But I mean, there'll be no access along
Right.
that river, there'll be no access along Halifax Drive during all this construction time.
Correct. And what our plan is, and every incentive is to build this as rapidly as we can. But after we close, we still have to go through permitting approvals. And then it will take at least 24 to 28 months to do all that construction. And so that's why we've got the 4 years, is to give a cushion on that. And our intent is to start the apartment community along with the retail all at the same time. That's our goal. The reason, as Mark stated, that the 20,000 square feet in the public parks were carved out and the apartment building not, is that the apartment building wasn't what the city felt like was needed to make the park activated and make it a place where the public could go. And so
Okay.
we have no incentive not to build the apartment building
Okay.
simultaneously.
All right, thank you. All right, any more questions for anybody as far as our presentation goes? Any of that? All right, thank you, Tim. Anybody from the public want to come and speak? Come on up, Robert.
Commission members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North, Port Orange. My concern is with flooding. We've had a real problem here, and I look at all these vaults all over the place underground there, and I haven't heard much from them with regard to it, except that there's a stone bottom to these things. So I'm gathering that they didn't talk about any pump system in order to pump it out into the river or whatever, or if they're even connected to each other, or they're just individual vaults. They're going to be building up the soil, so where's all the water going to go? And I have not much confidence from what I've heard that this is going to be adequate. And once we have, we've been having 2-3 weeks of rain, and do you pump this stuff out, or is it all going to get absorbed down into the ground? I haven't heard enough to give me much confidence that we're going to be doing well. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Anybody else? Brendan, you ain't coming up? Nothing to say? I know you're not getting paid unless you clock in.
Brendan Galbraith, 4190 Halifax Drive, the neighbor to the south. I've had a few phone calls with Charles, and I admire him, how he carries himself, how he proceeds through his business, how he deals with challenges. And I have to say, I've never had more confidence. 24 years, I think, we've been in the redevelopment. I sat in one of those chairs in '99 when it was the first CRA redevelopment board. Had a lot of vision, and I have a lot of confidence that this gentleman's going to pull it off. So he has my full support, and we're happy to be a neighbor to the south.
Thank you. And I think that's important, right there. Okay, with that being said, and nobody else, no other additional comment?
I have one question.
Go.
In the document on page 2, it references the number of units per acre.
In the MDA, so.
Yeah, right, and it's it shows 37 on Exhibit 4. It's 32. It's just a typo, but
Basically, the way that code is written, the mixed-use category
right.
has to be at a maximum of 32 units per acre. The mixed-use category in the overall Riverwalk area contains more land than just in this project then. So basically, this project's at 37 units per acre, but overall, when you look at the mixed use, which is basically that's that colored map with the green and yellow then, there's all their alternate locations of pink on there. So basically, it does work out currently as what proposed then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that being said, we have a motion and a second to approve the Riviera Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan. Would you call the roll, please? Oh, stand by. With policy considerations. Do I have that in the motion?
Yeah.
Do I need to amend do I need to amend the motion?
Motion to amend the motion.
Okay.
I believe motion to amend the motion.
Well, you can't amend the motion. Somebody else has to amend the motion. The chair can't amend the
No,
motion.
No,
he
I'm
can't.
not.
No,
No,
he's
I'm
not.
not.
He-
Tom?
But
He's just explaining what needs to be done.
Help me, Tom.
Yeah, I'm reading here.
So first do a motion to amend the motion.
And you want the recommendations? Is
Aren't
that, oh,
those-
policy
For the
considerations.
policy considerations. We'll-
Yeah,
Aren't these policies built into this MDA though? I mean, the height and all, I mean, the 8 points that we were looking at is as policy considerations. When I read the MDA, they're in there.
They are. So
So why do we have to amend
need to have
anything?
them amended? Yeah, so we don't, because it's included within the MDA.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Tim?
Yeah, there's nothing in the staff report for those.
Right. Well, it just says,
The staff report, basically, the recommendation is basically approval subject to
Oh,
all the
subject to
policies there. Then
Thank you
basically,
very much.
they are in the MDA, but basically they are written in the MDA and they're making the request in the MDA. So if you approve it, those are the code requirements.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why we need the MDA.
but right now they're not.
They're not. We need approval, recommendation of approval of the policy and the MDA. We take that to city council, and if they recommend it, approve it, then that establishes the MDA and those requirements there.
Make a motion to amend the motion to add the approval of the policy issues discussed in the staff report.
Second.
So I have that motion, I have that second. We vote on that?
And then you do a new motion.
Okay. So,
And then-
all those in favor say aye.
Which one are we voting?
We are amending the
amendment.
motion. We have a motion to amend the motion
And that is,
to add the policy considerations.
okay. I just want to make sure because it was kind of unclear.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays?
Do
Okay.
we need that in roll call?
No, well, do we? Not that one.
We're it's just a simple
Amend.
to amend.
Okay.
Now he's gonna do an,
All right, so now we have motion on the floor for the MDA.
With
Correct.
the, with the
no,
amendment.
now you need a new motion to do the MDA with policy consideration.
I thought we just amended the
You
No,
original.
we
amended-
just
you-
made a motion to
To amend.
To amend the motion. All right, so give me a new motion, Tom, with the policy.
Make a
consideration.
motion to approve case number, what is it? Bear with me.
PRZA.
Yes.
So the
Make a
very
motion to amend, or to approve case number PRZA-23-0004, including recommendations for policy. Recommendations? I forget what it was.
You need a new second on that?
Yeah.
I'll
Second.
second it.
All right, so I got second. Okay. Further discussion? Being none, call the roll, please.
Shannon?
Stan Schmidt,
Yes.
Newton White,
Yes.
John Junko,
Yes.
For public comment on the new motion?
Bobo Femi,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan,
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes, I did. There was no,
Yes, for more.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay. 6-0.
We're done.
Okay, we passed.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Charles.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Well, that was who's on first, what's on second.
Yeah, yeah. Well, policy considerations. Okay.
All right.
Commissioner comments. Bo, I'll start with you down there. Should be quick. Anything? Tom?
No, thank you, staff. Great work.
Johnny?
Apologies for not making last meeting, unexcused. Most of you know that it was, my daughter went into labor and I took off to go see her, so that was why I was not at last month's meeting, so I apologize for that.
He was on the 2 to 6 feeding duty. Newton, you got anything?
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Stan?
No, this is, I think the staff's done a great job. I'm looking forward to this and getting rolling finally.
I'm gonna piggyback on that. I am just excited as can be when I got this package. I mean, I guess surprised would be an understatement as to when I saw the schematics and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was really like in wow.
That's way past what usually we
exciting.
see.
Yeah, I guess I didn't I thought I was envisioning like 3-story buildings kind of thing you see over in the Maitland area where you apartments, 2-story apartments, but then downstairs was not that. And then to have the parking garage in the middle, concealed where you really don't see it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I guess, and the only other thing I thought about down there, they got, some tree retention and building up these sites. What we've learned over the years is building up the sites and trying to keep historic trees doesn't work anymore. Johnny, you know that. Building tree wells and that stuff. And so the way the landscape's going to lay out on this is really going to be beautiful once it matures. So, but other than that, again, great job, Tim. I'm very pleased with where y'all gone with this and just hope we just keep it rolling, man. Good job. You got any comments? Nope. Public comments? Girls? Nothing?
I gotta take him to Orlando.
You don't want to say anything about
No,
his
they're
driving,
waiting for me
anything?
to take him to the airport.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move.
And where's it?
All right.